going to have a little bit of, okay. Today we're going to have a little bit of a different kind of interaction. So I'll just tell you briefly what the process will be. I have a presentation that I'm going to share with everyone. The subject is relationship and emotions in caregiving work. And that'll be about 40 minutes. And then we have a small recess, right, Margareta? And then we have another guest who's...
Hold on. Sorry, can you turn on your microphone? Sarah, sorry, turn on your microphone. I couldn't mute. Yeah.
Okay, so everyone can hear me, so I'm going to repeat. So our session for today is going to involve two parts. The first part is I'm going to speak about the presentation that we have prepared relating to relationship and emotions in caregiving work. That'll be about 40 minutes, and then we'll take a short recess. And then we have another guest who's going to participate in the presentation today. And he's a fellow worker from the Philippines who's been here for a while. Margareta, if you want to say a little bit about him, and has perhaps his story to tell. And of course, there's always time for questions, answers, remarks, sharing experiences, and so on. Also with the material that I'm going to present, and of course with our guest. Anything else you'd like to say, Margareta, before we begin?
No,
yeah,
only one thing, that it's she. The guest is she and not he. That's it.
Oh, it's a she. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll introduce her whenever she will join the meeting.
Okay. Anat, Yaakov, is there anything else you'd like to say before I begin?
We're going to be excited with the new guest.
Okay.
Absolutely. I will also be excited with Sarah, not only with a guest.
So I'm going to share the screen. Margareta, can I share the screen?
Okay.
Wait a minute, where is this? 1 minute here. There we go. Okay, so our subject for the next 40 minutes or so will be relationship and emotions in caregiving work. Well, I think this kind of says it all in terms of what caregiving work is. Caregiving work is work with emotions. I think anyone that's had this kind of experience knows and understands that. Our own emotions and the emotions that we are able to manage, perceive, understand, and relate to, respond to, etc., of our client and patient. That is the basis of our work. So what is care? The word care has a double meaning. On the one hand, it emphasizes care activities such as bathing, dressing, and feeding someone. On the other hand, care is also feelings of concern such as caring or affection from the caregiver towards the patient. When we care about someone, we usually feel commitment and responsibility towards him. And we talked more in detail about, relationships and what they entail, trust and so on, and reliability. And I think that when we are sincere in the way that we relate to people, I think one of our participants in this group said that when she had a previous experience working abroad, heart and soul to the children that she was responsible for, and she had an appropriate response from the family that she was working for, and they gave her everything, if I remember her words. And so caring is about emotions. It's about exposing ourselves. It's about giving of ourselves in order that we can allow this interaction between our client or patient and the work that needs to be done. So care work has been defined as the work that provides services based on sustained personal interaction and is motivated, at least partly, by concern about others. The basis of care work involves creating a relationship with the patient and his family. And we talked about relationship building and the components that go into building a relationship of trust and so on. But here I'd like to emphasize that usually it's not just us and the client or patient. It's usually us and the client and his family. I think that most people that you will encounter in your work do have families. They are involved at one level or another. And it's very important that you kind of see them as a secondary circle of client, in the sense that primary response and responsibility is for the primary client, but the secondary responsibility is building a good relationship with the family. Usually families, not always, but very often families have so many issues that are involved in caring for a disabled person in their vicinity. They divide, the responsibility. One may be in charge of finances, another may be in charge of medical issues, another may be in charge of perhaps relationship with you, or not. But there's always one or two that are more involved than the others. And it's very important that you see them as a part of the cycle of the caregiving group that is involved in dealing with your client or patient. Relationship is the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. And I think this is, if you're connected at an emotional basis with your client and his family, in the sense that you have a responsibility and you take charge of being proactive and doing your job as being responsible for his well-being, physical as well as emotional. What does that mean to be responsible for another person? Obviously, you have his best interest at heart. And many needs may not be able to be filled by you just as a caregiver, psychological, emotional, but being aware of them is part of the deal, okay? Part of the deal. Interpersonal relationships. Okay, interpersonal relationship is an association between two or more people that may range from fleeting to enduring. Okay, this is going to be an enduring relationship of many months. The association may be based on care, solidarity, regular business interactions, or some other type of social commitment. All of these are relevant. The relationship you create with your patient and his family is the interpersonal relationship. And again, we talked about, or I spoke about borders. Very important to build borders, because this type of a relationship may be, for those of you that have worked in this kind of a position before, abroad or within your country, may be familiar with it, but it's not one of these ordinary familial relationships. We have brothers, cousins, neighbors. We know what the expectations are and how you respond and how you relate in each culture. This is something different. A live-in care worker, you have to define it, kind of deal the cards from the beginning. And everything needs to be negotiated. Okay, everything needs to be negotiated to the minutest detail. Meaning and importance of a relationship. Relationships provide the opportunity for three key benefits: exchange of support, social engagement, and a sense of worth. I think exchange of support is obvious. You're going to be supporting your client, and in many ways, he's also there to provide something for you. Social engagement, yes, you're going to be engaging socially in some way, whatever circles he's and a sense of worth. This is something very important. The sense of worth is important for everyone, and to encourage us. And on the other side, also our clients need to know that they also need a sense of worth. And part of our responsibility is to allow them this sense of worth, not because of what we're doing for them, but what they can still do for themselves. All major ingredients for the foundation of well-being of both sides of a relationship. Okay. Components of a relationship. On the surface of a relationship, there are needs, desires, and abilities. And under the surface of the relationship, there are expectations, knowledge, and emotions. Okay. So very often there are emotions that neither the client or the caregiver sometimes is aware of or is, alerted to. Sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative. But I think that taking charge and being responsible for the way we respond emotionally is part of the caregiver's job. Okay, it's part of everybody's job not to fly off the handle and respond emotionally negatively or overwhelmingly positive, but to be in control of our emotions. But especially if we're a caregiver and we're living we live at our work. You live and work at the same place, and that could be very emotionally charged, and it needs to be dealt with. It's perfectly normal that caregivers have negative emotions as well as positive emotions on a daily, regular life cycle. Everybody has a whole, a whole cycle of different types of emotions. And part of knowing how to check your emotions, put them, where it can be dealt with properly. And like we spoke before about how we express ourselves and the type of behavior, not being passive aggressive, not being aggressive, being, direct and being proactive. Those are the things we expect from ourselves as professionals. On the surface of the relationship, there are needs. Both the caregiver and the patient have needs, okay? Needs for listening, attention, honesty, and feeling respected. Both, and desires as well. Both caregiver and the patient have desires, needs for listening, attention, honesty, and feeling respected. And abilities, both the caregiver and the patient have abilities, ability to listen, to respect each other. I don't know about if everybody has abilities to listen. If you're a disabled person, you may or may not have all kinds of abilities. This is true. But I'd like to put the emphasis on the caregiver's abilities, desires, and needs. Okay. Above everything, respect. Under the surface of relationship, there are expectations, there is knowledge and emotions on both sides, the caregiver and the client. The connection between the two layers of a relationship, needs, desires, abilities, expectations, knowledge, and emotions, all of that is part of the emotional caregiving responsibility. So care work as emotion work, as I began my talk by emphasizing, care work is often defined as emotion work. Emotion work can be defined as work that involves emotions. Emotions arise and work that requires to express emotions, okay? Our work requires that we express emotions. It can also be defined as management of one's own feelings or work done in an effort to maintain a relationship. It is only natural that during the caregiving work, different and varied emotions will arise, both positive and negative, and each emotion is legitimate. What I want to say is that, hey, caregivers are people also, and they have their life and they have what's happening in their life as well as, what's happening in the client's life situation. And it's very important that we as caregivers know how to put boundaries, but on the other hand, respond to our own emotional state. It's not normal, it's not natural not to respond or give some kind of ventilation to our own emotions. And it's very important that you find the proper means to do it, perhaps by exercising, perhaps by making friends and sharing with them difficulties, anxiety, any way that that is appropriate for you to release tension, tiredness, frustration. All of those things are part of the job of any caregiver, whether they're from the family or if you're a professional. It's very important to be able to have an appropriate way to deal with your own emotions. Okay, it's very logical, very legitimate. Along with the emotions you have towards your patient, okay, again, you must be able to contain the emotions that you feel and that the situation provokes in you. It is important to recognize that your emotions, identify them, and give them space and knowledge. If you feel any negative emotions, do not suppress them. Do not be left alone with your feelings and emotions. You can always find someone to talk to, friends, family, or agency. And I stress that you do share, whatever processes that that you go through with the family as the first circle, and with friends, okay, and with other caregiving professionals that would be appropriate as well. I want to emphasize privacy in this place, because there's a fine line of what you need to share and what you want to talk about with people, and the privacy of your client or patient, or what is going on in the home, and so on. So it is kind of a balance that you must find in what is appropriate to share and what not to share. Obviously, if you want to keep a journal, if you want to write things, perhaps not on the media. Pictures of yourself, okay. Pictures of the family and your client, not so okay, unless you have, permission for that. There's a place for your emotions, and you have to know how to, give it place, give it a place. Tips for creating good relationship. Okay, we kind of went through this before, but important to emphasize. Be mindful of how you start a conversation. Ask open questions. Use the I statement. Be specific in the messages that you want to transfer, and give others the attitude you want to receive. I think this is rules of thumb that are very, very easy to follow, and and good advice. So now we'd like to discuss with you what you think about emotions, how to deal with emotions in your work situation, negative, positive, and so on. What are your expectations from the relationship with your patient? If you're willing to share what you expect, what do you think your patient's expectations are from you? What feelings do you think may arise during caregiving work? And how do you usually express feelings? How do you feel in general about care work? Big questions. And we do appreciate your sharing what your thoughts are, what you've had in the past in terms of experience, how you dealt with your feelings, what feelings arose. Anyone like to share something? Well, I will share something to start the ball rolling. When I was very young social worker, I worked in a neighborhood that I lived in, and I found it very, very difficult to see my clients on a regular basis in the supermarket, on the street, and everywhere else. I found that it was completely overwhelming. And it took me a while to understand that the reason that it's overwhelming for me is because I need to put boundaries for myself. Okay, what's me, what's work, what isn't work, and so on, and not to get overwhelmed every time I'm confronted with something that's not in time and place. At the time, I decided that I have to move. I can't live in the same neighborhood that I work. But after a while, I understood this, and it was, not an issue anymore for me to deal with it. And I'm sharing that boundaries need to be placed, because our work is emotional and we get involved, and there's pain, there's frustration, there's, loss, all of those parts of the life that we encounter in our work very often. And so, it's important, to put boundaries, especially if you can't move away. You live where you work. So I invite you to share and your thoughts about that. Anyone?
Can I say something?
Please do.
Yeah, in regards to the boundaries, I think yes, you're right that we only have limitation in regards to deciding as to what our patient would like to do, most especially in terms of the decision making that him or the patient and their families are currently doing. Perhaps we cannot intervene whatever they want. Let's say if they would like to do some medical procedure. So probably for me, we have to set boundaries because we're not into the position to decide what is best for the patient that we will have. So perhaps, yeah, I think that's for me. Boundaries in giving, in doing some decision, most especially for anything regarding the medical procedure that our patient would might or might have in the future perhaps.
Okay, thank you. And what about boundaries in terms of your emotional, state? Getting involved, feeling sad, identifying with your client's pain or loss. This is also something that very often happens, when we identify completely with our client and his emotional state. Um, if our client is sad, sometimes it has a negative effect on our own, emotional state. And obviously if they're just not just, but if they're in physical pain, we try to do what we can, but we're talking about, the emotional basis of the interactions. Would you like to say something about that?
In regards to that, I know it's going to be a challenging on our part, because we cannot give any full control in regards to giving some boundaries. We have to work professionally. So that's why there will be limitations on the way we act, the way we speak, the way we talk with our clients or with our patients. So you really have to be professional all the time. That's what I yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's the goal. That's the goal.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, I just want to share also.
Please do.
Okay, it's Marites Caparas speaking. I have a different experience. This I noticed that being a care worker, it's a big difference between taking care of old person and youngest uh, child like that. So when I was taking care of the children, it's easy for me to convince everything that when I say something, they are following me. But in if you're taking care of disabled, so it's not easy because the behavior, they are not going to scare with you all the time, unlike the child. So the feeling youngest versus this disabled, it's so different. But the time that I going to leave my employer when they going to migrate in Canada, so the time that I recognize the boundaries, they are wanted to me to come with them, but it's so difficult. So it's difficult for us to leave each other. So the time that I saw the children is lying down and rolling, crying, they telling, "Come back, please come back, don't leave me." So it's very hurt, and I cried too much, and also my employer, because we doesn't like to leave each other. But in this, it's a past time, 7 months ago. So the emotion and the feeling that I feel that before that I was taking care of the child, it's not difficult at my last employer. So I was taking care of patient with dementia, Alzheimer. So it's easy for me to leave him, but the respect and trust I also received from that family. And that the boundary that you are talking about is now I recognize that whatever happened, you are not a member of the family. You will go and live by the time that they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh, okay. Yes. So through your experience, you've learned to also guard yourself in a sense and put the boundaries where you won't, you know you will be at one point leaving and parting from your client or family, and you think you're going to be dealing better now with having to part with your client. Okay. Children, yeah, children can break your heart. And you talked about dealing with difficult situations of discipline, perhaps, if they don't listen, if they don't. Yes, it's very different with adults, obviously. Dementia, dealing with dementia is also a difficult situation. And yeah, you can't teach them, and it's emotion to emotion. You try to latch on to where their emotional state is and kind of guide them from there. That is a very important skill. And you did it very well. And good for you. Good for you that you learned that about yourself and learned how to put those guards so that you could be protected as well and continue in a professional way. Okay, that's a process of learning that we go through as caregivers in our profession. To care but not break. Anyone else like to share thoughts or an experience they've had in our emotional work? It involves a lot of giving, from my experience. And people that choose this profession have a need to do that, from my experience. So I can identify with what you experienced and what you told us. And yeah. Anyone else like to share? So we can take a 5-minute break, and Margareta and Yaakov, if you'd like to, after 5 minutes, introduce our guest, I think that would be okay.
Yeah, that would be.
I'm gonna call her.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna call her.
All right.
Okay. So we'll be back in 5 minutes.